Well, here we are, opening of Ango. Ango is a really exciting time. It's a good time to suspend our disbelief. We have a hard time sometimes seeing just how clearly we have prejudged our lives, prejudged our karmic trajectory. Each of you, and I counted for each of you, has at least 1 million reasons why you can't be here, why you shouldn't be doing this, and yet you're here. So it's good to use Ango, and this retreat in particular, as a great reset, a way of realizing what is possible when you step outside of your karmic conditioning. Something as easy as turning out for meditation at 6 a.m. Even once, it can change. It will change your life. All you have to do is just do these things once to prove me wrong. But the thing is, sometimes we can't. We feel like we can't. And then the question comes in, why? Why can't we? We all get very hung up in the epic story that we call our life. We rehearse it, we polish it, we defend it, but very seldom do we actually come home to it. Coming home means letting go of the story long enough to meet things as they are. I often say this, but the gap between things as they are and things as I expect them to be is exactly where suffering forms. Big gap, big suffering. Small gap, less suffering. No gap, coming home, no suffering. There's a case in the Mumonkan, the second case, and it brings us face to face with that gap and the way we use our life causes and conditions to kind of keep us trapped and reinforce and even excuse our story. It's called Hyakujo's fox. The case is, whenever Master Hyakujo delivered a sermon, an old man was always there listening with the monks. And when they left, he left too. One day, however, he remained behind. The master asked him, "What man are you, standing in front of me?" The old man replied, "Indeed, I'm not a man. In the past, in the time of Kashyapa Buddha, I lived on this mountain as a Zen priest. On one occasion, a monk asked me, 'Does a perfectly enlightened person fall under the law of cause and effect, or not?' I answered, he does not. And because of that answer, I fell into the life of a fox for 500 iterations. Now, I beg you, Master, please say a turning word so I can be released from this body of a fox." Then he asked, "Does a perfectly enlightened person fall under the law of cause and effect or not?" And the master answered to him, "The law of cause and effect cannot be obscured." Upon hearing this, the old man immediately became deeply enlightened. Making his bows, he said, "I have now been released from the body of a fox, and I'll be behind the mountain. I'm going to dare to make an additional request of you, Master. Could you please perform my funeral as you would for a deceased priest?" The master had the Ino strike the anvil with a gavel and announce to the monks that after the meal there would be a funeral service for the deceased priest. The monks wondered, "Isn't everybody healthy? I think everybody's here who belongs here. I don't think there's anyone sick in the infirmary. What could this possibly be about?" So after the meal, the master led the monks to the foot of a rock behind the mountain, and with his staff he poked out the dead body of a fox. He then performed the ceremony of cremation. That evening, the master ascended the rostrum in the hall and told the monks the whole story. Obaku, one of Hyakujo's disciples, thereupon asked, "The old man missed the turning word and fell into the state of a fox for 500 lives. Suppose every time he answered and he made no mistakes, what would happen then?" The master said, "Just come over here and I'll tell you." So Obaku drew close and slapped the master. The master clapped his hands, laughing aloud, and said, "I thought the barbarian's beard was red, but here's a barbarian with a red beard." A lot going on, yeah? A lot going on. Our lives are a lot like that, aren't they? A lot of stories, a lot of pleading, circumstances to be different, a lot of hopes of what this practice is going to bring. Hyakujo Ikkai was one of the great masters of the Tang Dynasty, and he's remembered as a pivotal figure in shaping the Zen monastic tradition. He actually established the first comprehensive set of regulations that gave structure to the rhythm of Zazen, work, and ritual life. To a large extent, when we follow a pattern during sesshin, we're walking right in Hyakujo's footsteps. He had a famous saying, "A day without work is a day without food." And he continued to labor in the fields even until old age. He wanted to embody that principle. His teaching style, as you can tell, was vigorous, direct, and he often liked to express paradox through sudden action, which is where we meet him here. We all get caught up or hung up on this epic story of cause and effect. We call it karma, sometimes fate, sometimes destiny. Sometimes we use it to explain why life is the way it is. And sometimes we use it to excuse ourselves from responsibility. But as this case shows, either approach misses the mark completely. The old priest answered, "No, an enlightened person does not fall under cause and effect." I think he imagined awakening as some kind of escape hatch. Enlightenment meant being above karma. And it says, for that mistake, he lived 500 lives as a fox. Cunning, elusive, always on the edge of human existence, right? The kind to deftly avoid all of the things that trap us in this human form. Isn't that what we all do when we try to dodge our own circumstances? We kind of wind up outwitting ourselves. We wind up just cheating ourselves out of our true home, out of our original nature, or at least the recognition of it. When Hyakujo replies, the law of cause and effect cannot be obscured, what he's really saying is, you can argue with it, you can deny it, you can theologize it, but ultimately, you can't escape it. The very moment you act, there's a consequence that follows. That's not a curse. Right? Unless, of course, you're not acting on what's here. If you're acting on what you wish was here, or what you think should be here, then you got problems. But in a way, that's the volition that can liberate everyone from suffering. The fact is, though, that enlightenment doesn't lift you out of this. If anything, it drives you straight into this, the challenges that your life brings you, the things that you consider to be, misfortune. The gap between our expectations and reality is where suffering grows. We hope that things will be smooth, easy, or have some notion of propriety or fairness. But the real world doesn't bend to that story or dialogue. And if we continue to cling to our expectations, the gap only widens, and there's more suffering. If we meet things as they are, cause and effect stop being conceptual ideas. They become the living fabric that our lives are woven into. The old man was freed, not because he escaped karma, but because he saw finally through the story. Cause and effect aren't something to lament. They're not punishment. They're what the life that we're weaving, the acts that we are weaving with our own hands right here and right now. Every breath, every choice, every step. This is karma, yeah? But it's karma as living creativity, not as some binding chain. When you forget the idea of cause and effect, and you just work skillfully with what's here, well, then you found your liberation. Yeah? The slap is not a slap that's about violence. It's an act of deep, unhesitating intimacy. It reveals the truth that is prior to words and concepts, prior to your ideas about things as you think they should be. The Hyakujo motions and says, "Come nearer and I'll tell you." He was inviting him to experience what's beyond all those words, wasn't he? Obaku was a good student. He immediately stepped into that living moment. Yeah. And he delivered the remedy required to snap himself out of his own conceptual, prison. He saw the medicine Hyakujo was pointing to before Hyakujo administered it. And he administered a healthy dose to Hyakujo instead. And Hyakujo's laughter shows that the Dharma is not bound up in these clever answers, but it's in a direct, unhesitating response. And it's not even about our notion of what medicine is needed, as much as it is just celebrating when someone snaps out of the story. Ultimately, this koan asks us, can you stop for just a second looking for an escape? Can you stop imagining that freedom is elsewhere, somewhere where the laws of cause and effect don't apply? The way to freedom is to master your present circumstances, not by controlling them, but by meeting them fully and creatively. And when you do, karma ceases to be some static idea and becomes the very nature of your life itself. It's immediate, it's luminous, it's free. And there's always a Dharma gate to open. The way to freedom is to master those circumstances. Simply see what is here and act on it. Mumon wrote a commentary about the case. He said, not falling under the law of cause and effect, for what reason had he fallen into the state of a fox? The law of cause and effect cannot be obscured. For what reason has he been released from a fox's body? If, in regard to this, you have the one eye, then you'll understand that the former Hyakujo enjoyed 500 lives of grace as a fox. Mumon's never satisfied with easy answers, right? He presses on both sides of the question. If you say an enlightened one doesn't fall under the law of cause and effect, then why did the old priest fall into the body of a fox? But if you say the laws of effect cannot be obscured, then why was he released? It's playing on both sides of the dialectic, trying to squeeze you back into that conceptual trap. But the mind, because the mind loves neat answers. But Mumon wants you to hold the paradox and see beyond it. Both sides resist explanation. That's the true nature of the Dharma. You can't be packaged into some safety of one position. It's always here now. And if you think you have it cornered, that's when the trouble begins. Key is what Mumon's calling this one eye. This is the eye that sees without dividing, the eye that perceives beyond yes and no, beyond falls under and does not fall under, sees beyond the karmic ledger. With this eye, 500 lives of the fox are not a punishment. They're not a mistake. They're a grace. Just like the circumstances you find yourself in sometimes, that you'd say you want to escape. All of this has a transformational quality of allowing us to bring ourselves and those we call other out of suffering, as long as we work with it skillfully. Even in a fox's body, even 500 lives of wandering, they're just the very field of practice. There's no outside of the Dharma. Priest, fox, monk, master, fireman, mayor, it doesn't matter. Each life is precisely the unfolding of cause and effect, and awakening is nothing apart from it. Mumon reminds us that if we insist on cutting life into good karma and bad karma, blessing and curse, we miss the real point. Seen with the one eye, everything is clear and nothing's excluded. Even the fox's tail swishing through the underbrush. It's a fairy tale of the Buddha. Mumon ends with a capping verse. He says, not falling, not obscuring. Two faces, one die. Not obscuring, not falling. 1,000 mistakes. 10,000 mistakes. Not falling, not obscuring, two faces, one die. Falling under cause and effect, and not falling under cause and effect, are two faces stamped on one coin. It isn't a matter of choosing the right face, heads or tails, fox or priest. Both belong to the same die, this very life that you're living. The moment we try to hold to one side and reject the other, now you have heaven and hell. 1,000 mistakes, 10,000 mistakes. To say cause and effect bind me, that's one mistake. To say cause and effect don't touch me, that's another mistake. To cling to either view is to miss the living point of what's here now. You don't need to pick a side. You don't need to settle for half the coin. Not falling, not obscuring. The whole die is right here. Each breath, each action, each circumstance is already complete. It's already whole. The invitation here is not to avoid mistakes, but to see through them. Every mistake or gap or every slip into fox life is also Buddha life. 1,000 mistakes, 10,000 mistakes, and still, here we are, whole and awake, and sitting here listening patiently. So what do we do with this? We stop waiting for freedom, and we take up our life like it is and recognize the freedom that's already there to express it. We don't try to outwit our karma or escape it, and we don't use it as an excuse, as a way of excusing us from responsibility for what's right in front of us. We just notice the gap between our expectations and what's presenting themselves, and we step into that gap with both feet. We re-knit the fabric that's rent, right? And then we have a usable garment again. That's the turning word. Working skillfully with our circumstances, knowing and owning our own biasing, and bringing everything about ourselves into the light of conscious awareness, even the things that we'd rather not see, maybe particularly those things, and learning to master them. It allows us to stand right where we are, not being divided. Fold the laundry, wash the bowl, rake the leaves. Do the thing you've been avoiding. Wake up at crazy hours and sit zazen. This is not falling, not obscuring. This is the whole die. Every action is a Dharma in motion. Every moment is a chance to be awake.